Humanity has existed for 7 million years, which isn't very long compared to the Earth, but it was definitely long enough to completely wreck the planet. We've done it all: environmental destruction, driving countless species to extinction, and endless wars. Humans just keep causing disasters without realizing that once every 1,000 years, the gods from all realms gather at the Council of Valhalla. Presided over by the supreme god Zeus, they vote on whether humanity even deserves to continue existing. At this particular meeting, the gods were in total agreement and had no intention of giving humanity another chance. They were sick and tired of having to guide these ignorant mortals. It was like humans were just worms eating away at the world. Seeing that all the deities had made up their minds, Zeus slammed his gavel to finalize the decision to wipe out humanity. But just before the final, world-ending strike came down, Brunhilde, one of the 13 Valkyrie sisters, appeared. She shouted loud and clear, asking the gods to hold their horses. She wanted to save humanity. Despite admitting that humans are a tyrannical and despotic species, she argued they were also living beings who deserved one more chance. To challenge the gods' decision, just talking wasn't enough, so Brunhilde brought up an ancient tradition. She called for a Ragnarok, a tournament of one-on-one battles between 13 gods and 13 of humanity's greatest champions. The first side to get 7 wins would be the ultimate victor. If the gods won, humanity would be annihilated. But if humanity won, they'd get to live for another 1,000 years. Brunhilde's proposal sounded like a joke to the gods. After all, what chance did mortals have against their creators? Faced with these arrogant and conceited gods, Brunhilde decided to play the taunt card, suggesting that the gods were actually scared of humanity's power. It was an obvious trap that every god saw, but none of them could resist it. The gods were officially pissed. On behalf of the council, Zeus agreed to the proposal from that sassy-mouthed Valkyrie and allowed her to find 13 of humanity's finest representatives for this showdown. And that is how the war between gods and men began. The Valhalla arena would be the stage for these epic clashes, witnessed by massive crowds from both sides. The referee and MC for the tournament is Heimdall. To kick off the first match, the horn-blowing god announced the tournament rules. Basically, the match ends when one of the combatants dies. And here is the first matchup. Representing the gods is the mightiest warrior in all the realms, the strongest god of thunder, who once single-handedly defeated 66 giants from Jotunheimr when they attacked Asgard. Representing the Norse gods, it's Thor. On humanity's side is the strongest general from the Three Kingdoms period, a man who once took on all 3 Liu brothers. He was slandered by historians as a coward who begged Cao for his life, only to meet a bitter end. But the truth is, he intentionally let himself be captured because he was just too strong. He got bored of being top-ranked on his server for too long and wanted to switch servers for a better matchup. He is Lu Bu Fengxian, or more commonly, Lu Bu. Heimdall, the guardian of the apocalypse, took a deep breath and blew his Gijallar horn. Ragnarok had officially begun. The battle between 2 mighty warriors was expected to be insane, but in reality, both Thor and Lu Bu just loosely held their weapons and stared intensely at each other, as if daring the other to make the first move. After a while, they both began to slowly walk toward each other. In their lives, both Thor and Lu Bu preferred a one-hit kill fighting style, so after carefully observing their opponent, they both decided to get this over with quickly. The first to strike was Lu Bu, with a massive overhead swing of his sky-piercer halberd. Thor met the blow with his monstrous hammer, Mjolnir. To everyone's surprise, the god of thunder was pushed back a considerable distance. Not giving his opponent time to change clothes, Lu Bu charged at Thor and delivered several more blows. But the thunder god bluntly countered with a strike of his own, affirming his immense power. The fight was incredibly close. It was hard to say who was stronger. In the stands, the gods were bewildered while the humans were ecstatic. However, the difference between the two fighters was that Thor wasn't just a strength build, he also had a power-up system. After juicing Mjolnir with lightning, Thor leaned back, ready to swing his supersized hammer at Lu Bu. Witnessing this incredible power, the gods all agreed, this game's a cakewalk. This match was basically over, time to move on to round 2. But wait, something was off. Lu Bu not only blocked the attack but also countered Thor with a deep gash. If the humans were surprised, the gods were 10 times more shocked. They knew Thor's power all too well. How could a mere mortal injure the god of thunder? It was then they realized that the weapon Lu Bu was using was a divine weapon. What's a divine weapon? It's part of Brunhilde's plan to balance the game. Before the tournament, she had summoned all her Valkyrie sisters. She requested that they all merge with the warriors' weapons to create divine weapons, giving humans the tools they needed to actually touch the gods. After taking his first hit, Thor dropped the arrogant act, acknowledged Lu Bu's strength, and expressed regret that they weren't born in the same time and place. Both sides continued to charge at each other with all their strength and spirit. The battle was reaching its climax. Suddenly, Lu Bu's halberd began to glow intensely, signaling the activation of its special ability. Lu Bu gained the upper hand against the thunder god, relentlessly attacking, gradually sealing off the hammer's movement and forcing Thor to use his own hand to block. In that very moment, his glove shattered. This was all part of the plan. The sky-piercer halberd had been buffed with the armor-breaking ability of the Valkyrie Rangriz. Lu Bu and Rangriz had been aiming for Thor's glove all along. They believed that crippling the glove meant crippling the mighty Mjolnir. According to Norse legend, Mjolnir's power was so immense that it would kill its user, so Thor needed the glove for protection. Now that the glove was broken, Thor could no longer use his favorite toy. Lu Bu relentlessly charged, hoping to take a few pints of blood from the Norse god. But was the god really at a disadvantage? Thor's expression didn't change at all. Mjolnir began to emit an enormous amount of heat. Its body cracked further, accompanied by demonic pulsing sounds, heralding the awakening of the strongest divine weapon. It turns out, the legend about the glove was a total bamboozle. According to Zeus, Mjolnir was actually the one being protected by the glove from Thor's destructive power. Now, the real fight was about to begin. Before launching his attack on Lu Bu, Thor had just one request for his opponent: whatever happens, don't you dare die. With that, the god channeled all his power and his hammer's power to execute a serious, full-strength hammer throw, Thor's signature move. The moment the hammer was about to hit him, Lu Bu managed to react, ducking low to dodge, and immediately rushed forward to attack his opponent while the god was unarmed. But just as he swung his halberd, Mjolnir had already returned. Lu Bu dodged once more while still charging at Thor. The strongest part of Thor's attack wasn't the throw, but the catch, using the momentum to deliver a finishing blow. The incredibly sharp Lu Bu quickly went on the defensive to brace for the impact, which created a powerful shockwave that sent sand flying. When the dust settled, everyone saw Lu Bu still standing tall, and the crowd couldn't stop cheering. However, while Lu Bu looked fine at first glance, his legs were trembling uncontrollably. His leg bones, once thought to be as solid as rock, were shattered, and a sky-piercing pain caused the human war god to collapse. In this state, Lu Bu could barely move, let alone turn the tables. But among men, Lu Bu; among horses, red hair. His loyal steed, seeing its master fall, galloped to Lu Bu's side, ready to enter the battle with him. The audience roared at the sight. After a final effort, Lu Bu stood up and let out a heaven-shaking roar, returning to the fight. It seemed like Lu Bu was violating the 1v1 rule, but Zeus allowed it, arguing that red hair was practically a part of Lu Bu's body. Once man and horse were ready, Lu Bu spurred his mount to circle Thor, preparing to unleash his ultimate technique, Sky Eater, a move he had painstakingly trained to the level where it could split the heavens. What an interesting mortal, Thor acknowledged. Even his hammer could feel it. To show his respect, the Norse god would respond with his own most powerful attack. When Lu Bu's Sky Eater met Thor's awakened hammer, the collision created an immensely powerful shockwave and a blinding light. After that moment, the Skypiercer flew away, reverting back to the Valkyrie Rangriz. As for Lu Bu's arms, one was mangled and the other was just gone. Seeing his useless limb, the Three Kingdoms general didn't hesitate to rip it off with his teeth to get it out of the way. He looked at the sky one last time, spurred his horse forward, and accepted Thor's final blow. Undefeated his whole life, he had finally found a worthy opponent. Thor also delivered the blow to bid farewell to the brother he had always yearned to find. The fight ended after 16 minutes and 28 seconds. The victory belonged to Thor. Despite winning, Thor looked somber and not very happy. Afterward, Chen Gong and Lu Bu's army charged into the arena. Like master, like servant, they all rushed towards Thor. The Norse god granted their wish, sending them to join Lu Bu with a single swing of his hammer. The Great War of Ragnarok is no ordinary battle. It's a war of souls. Once defeated, the end result is complete and utter soul-crushing obliteration, regardless of whether you are a god, a human, or a Valkyrie. Losing the first round meant losing a great general and a sister, but Brunhilde couldn't afford to be sad for long. Her mission now was to find the next representative to reclaim the last round's loss. And the chosen one is someone whose strength comes from a deep-seated hatred for the gods. Humanity's ID number 1. A human so special that even the animals had to show up to hype his entrance. A character who, according to Heimdall's introduction, was born and blessed by the gods and would now step onto the stage to face his creator. He is the progenitor of humanity, Adam. In the legends, Adam was a creature made by God, allowed to live in the Garden of Eden, enjoying a life just like the gods. He could eat anything he liked, except for the forbidden fruit. But Adam broke the rule, so he and his wife, Eve, were exiled to the mortal world, becoming the first humans. However, that's not the whole story. It all started when Eve rejected the serpent god, causing him to despise her and falsely accuse her of stealing the forbidden fruit. The trial to judge Eve was presided over by the gods. The gods trusted other gods, not humans, so they punished Eve with expulsion from heaven. Just then, Adam walked in carrying 2 baskets of forbidden fruit. He took a single bite from each apple and spat it out, much to the shock of the gods present. After finishing both baskets of fruit, Adam went to take Eve away. The serpent god went ballistic and was about to attack, but Adam took him out with a single move. Then, Adam calmly led his wife down to the mortal world, determined to build a new paradise. If Adam is considered the progenitor of humanity, then his opponent must be a god of equal stature. Known as the father of the gods, the godfather of the cosmos, he is none other than Zeus. The story goes that a long time ago, somewhere in the universe, a battle to determine the greatest almighty being took place. Zeus, then in his prime, defeated his father, the Titan Cronus, who is known as the most powerful being in the universe, to officially ascend the throne and become the ruler of all realms. This was truly a tough match for humanity, far beyond Brunhilde's initial calculations. The one who was supposed to fight Adam was the god Shiva, but under pressure from Zeus, the Hindu god had to give up his slot. He would fight first. As soon as Zeus entered the arena, he started dancing. It was his way of warming up to enter his giant mode, ready for battle. On Adam's side, the Valkyrie who would partner with him also appeared. It was Ragnarok, the seventh sister. To suit Adam's close combat style, Ragnarok transformed into a knuckle duster. Both sides were ready. The second battle of Ragnarok officially began. To kick off the combat, after a few stomps to build momentum, Zeus lunged forward, aiming to land a direct punch on Adam. However, Adam dodged the blow in time. All of this happened in just 0.01 seconds, equivalent to the speed of light. Deciding that wasn't enough, Zeus repeated the same move, but this time with even greater speed. The result was the same. Adam still dodged everything. Zeus's attack speed kept increasing. Even when the godfather of the cosmos unleashed his ultimate move, Meteor Jab, or switched his attacks to kicks with the Divine Axe technique, Adam still dodged them all cleanly and prepared to counterattack. He unleashed a flurry of punches at an exponentially increasing speed and finished the combo with a kick that made Zeus feel quite a bit of pain. All of those moves were the exact same ones Zeus had just used, only more powerful. However, for a perverted god like him, this was the ultimate high. To explain what Adam just did is incredibly simple. He was, after all, a creation of the gods, a perfect copy made directly in their image. Therefore, any technique or attack could be perfectly copied by Adam. The power that allowed the first human to do this was his sharingan. To regain the upper hand, Zeus started doing his familiar dance again. This time, instead of unleashing a storm of blows, he moved continuously around Adam to deliver a finishing kick. But with his eyes, Adam saw through it and successfully dodged the attack. At the same time, he immediately replicated it to attack the old master's body, sending Zeus flying into the wall of the arena. Faced with the progenitor's overwhelming power, humanity couldn't help but get excited. The godfather of the cosmos also realized he was facing a tough opponent, a carbon copy of himself. Zeus could no longer afford to fight half-heartedly. He tensed his muscles, upgrading himself to a new version. He intended to use the punch that Cronus had used to damage him long ago. When that move is used, time itself stops and all laws are bent. Adam was about to get wrecked, or so everyone thought. Zeus was the one who got hit. His head spun nearly halfway around before he collapsed. Adam had once again used his sharingan to counter the attack, his blow even landing first. But before Heimdall could declare the winner of the second match, Zeus got back up, snapped his neck back into place, and continued to brawl with Adam. Seeing their chairman make a comeback, the gods cheered. But in reality, the situation wasn't looking good. Through the fight, Zeus realized something. Though Adam fought fiercely and had been trampled on by the gods, there was no hatred in his eyes. Since Zeus was wondering, Adam didn't mind answering. He had no problem with the gods. The simple reason Adam was fighting was because he was a father, and a father will never abandon his children. The answer was incredibly convincing, striking a chord with Eve, Cain, Abel, and all of humanity, Adam's descendants. Back in the fight, Zeus was now using his full power, compressing his muscles to a grotesque degree. After enduring excruciating pain, he returned in his most terrifying form, known as Adamas, a form that, according to the god Loki, Zeus hadn't used in hundreds of millions of years. Realizing the pressure had changed, Adam dropped his carefree attitude and went on the defensive. According to the god Hermes, the maximum time Zeus could maintain this state was around 12 minutes, 13 at a stretch. But in his battered state, he'd be lucky to last 5 minutes. The greater the power, the greater the risk. Every muscle fiber in Zeus's body was tightly compressed, but in return both his speed and power were increased 1,000-fold. Adam used his sharingan again, his fist colliding with his opponents before he himself could be harmed. The formula of Zeus attacking, Adam dodging, and then countering was repeated over and over. At this rate, victory belonged to Adam. However, anything used too much is at risk of overloading, and the sharingan was no exception. Zeus was risking it all with this form, taking blow after blow, precisely to force Adam to use his skill continuously. This was a gamble. Whoever exhausted themselves first would die. The attacks flew relentlessly, neither side giving an inch. The beautiful and astonishing fight had both humans and gods on their feet, watching. Fists collided amidst the cheers and anxious shouts of the audience. And then, the decisive moment arrived. As Zeus landed a direct punch to the face, a drop of blood fell into Adam's eye, pushing his already strained pupils past their limit, blinding him. The tide of battle now completely favored Zeus. He relentlessly unleashed attacks while Adam could only do his best to endure. At this point, the humans cried out, begging the Almighty to stop. In that moment, Adam remembered the cries of his children, and his fatherly instincts kicked in. Despite taking a massive blow, he grabbed the thunder god's hair and mustered his last bit of strength to fight back. The two exchanged blows one last time. It seemed like the rain of fists would never end, but then Zeus suddenly collapsed and returned to his original state. Had humanity won? Had the father of humanity defeated the father of the gods? Though a smile was on Adam's face, he had already died standing up at some point. Even in death, his body continued to attack, a heroic sight for humanity that will surely be etched into the memories of both humans and gods here. The second battle ended. Victory belonged to the god Zeus. The current score is 2-0 in favor of the gods. Losing 2 matches right off the bat, especially after losing their ace, Adam, put Brunhilde under immense stress. To make matters worse, the opponent for the next match would be the god of the sea, Poseidon, Zeus's older brother. If she didn't want to lose this match, Brunhilde had to choose her fighter carefully. While the Valkyrie was stressing out, a fighter appeared and nominated himself for the next match, Sasaki Kajiro, the greatest loser in the world of Japanese swordsmen. Strangely, while other fighters were chosen at their physical peak, Sasaki Kajiro was chosen at an age when he was knocking on death's door. The reason was that his swordsmanship improved over time. Even 400 years after his death, his spirit never rested from training for a single day. Therefore, it could be said that this was Sasaki Kajiro's peak condition. For this third match, the arena was changed to a stage submerged in water. The god's representative appeared, causing the water to swirl towards him and part, creating a path straight to the arena. If Zeus was the godfather of the cosmos, this god was the sovereign of the oceans, the tyrant of the sea. Even other gods dared not provoke the second of the three great gods of Olympus, the powerful Poseidon. Legend says that the Lord of the Seas once reduced the number of ruling gods on Olympus from 13 to 12. The unlucky god was the older brother of both Zeus and Poseidon, Adamas. At that time, Adamas, refusing to stand beneath his younger brother Zeus, led a rebellion. He tried to get Poseidon to support him, but the sea god showed him nothing but contempt for an almighty being seeking recognition who didn't dare to fight head-on. When Adamas lost his temper and attacked Poseidon, he was utterly defeated and killed. As for humanity's side, their representative appeared on a simple canoe. Known as history's greatest loser, a man who, even after passing on, continued to train to become stronger. His name is Sasaki Kajiro. However, people were quite concerned. Not only was he famous for being a loser, but he also looked like a frail old man. Surely he wasn't very tough. However, in the eyes of the masters, it was a different story. Musashi, the great swordsman of the two-sword school and the one who defeated and killed Kajiro, knew the swordsman's strength best. He declared that Kajiro was the most peerless swordsman in the world. In his lifetime, Kajiro was never considered a genius in swordsmanship. However, he possessed an incredible ability to observe his opponents and learn from nature. Thanks to this, he developed his own wild fighting style. The most special thing about Kajiro was that he would always mentally challenge his opponents first and accept defeat. Through this process of mental combat, he observed every sword stroke, every move of the top masters, and then used that to train himself and find ways to defeat them. He had faced all the greatest swordsmen of his time and found ways to counter their styles. So, even though in reality, Kajiro never defeated any famous swordsman, everyone knew he had surpassed them to become the strongest. Faced with the crowd's skepticism, Kajiro simply drew his sword and lightly tapped the arena floor. A ripple spread out, calming the churning water. It was then that the gods' eyes widened as they realized this swordsman was no joke. The third battle officially began. Both fighters stood still, observing each other. Though his body was motionless, Kajiro's brain was running at full capacity, trying to find a strategy against Poseidon. He couldn't even figure out how to get close to the sea god, let alone land a blow. And so, Kajiro suddenly sheathed his sword and sat down in the middle of the arena, causing another stir in the crowd. In the past, Kajiro would have probably thrown in the towel and gone back to training. But there was no backing out of this match. After saying that, Kajiro swung his sword at the god of the sea. Poseidon easily dodged and prepared to counter, but Kajiro's swordsmanship was not so simple. This was his famous swallow reversal technique from his lifetime, mimicking the sharp turns of a swallow in flight. The blade suddenly angled upwards, creating a surprising attack. Although Poseidon managed to dodge, he lost a few strands of hair. After that sword-powered haircut, Poseidon dropped some of his contempt and proactively changed his fighting stance. Taking a deep breath, he launched an attack with a series of trident thrusts. Having already analyzed Poseidon and combining it with his existing experience, the old swordsman had a countermeasure: Kajiro's ultimate skill, the 1,000-image defense. Not to be outdone, the sea god suddenly increased his speed, and although Kajiro saw it coming, he couldn't dodge in time, getting stabbed in the left side by the trident. Poseidon once again looked arrogant and disdainful. The gods started cheering, but Poseidon glared at them with murderous intent. Seeing this, Kajiro told the sea god he should reconsider how he treats his friends. Poseidon replied that he didn't care and didn't need any friends. Kajiro said, "Oh my, living like you gods must be so boring." Feeling insulted, Poseidon charged forward with a storm of trident thrusts, which even turned into a typhoon when the god unleashed his divine lightning, sea's fury technique. Kajiro dodged every attack, as if he had surpassed human limits to reach the level of a god. However, Poseidon wasn't just any ordinary god. He managed to get into Kajiro's blind spot to land a blow, putting him on the defensive, and then continued to spam thrusts at him. Every time Kajiro tried to counter, just as his blade was about to touch Poseidon, the god would disappear. And then, Kajiro's sword was shattered. For a swordsman, losing their sword is like game over. However, don't forget that every human fighter possesses a divine weapon. Kajiro's sword was also a god-slaying weapon with a special ability, allowing him to use the technique of the strongest opponent he had ever faced. The Valkyrie accompanying Kajiro was Atrist, who possessed two distinct personalities. Now, the pair of personalities within her would transform into two swords, allowing Kajiro to replicate the ultimate technique of his eternal rival, Musashi. Oh wow, so cool. Poseidon then treated him to a trident buffet, with a warning that blocking would mean death. Now with two swords, blocking became less risky. Not just Musashi, Kajiro was now drawing on his entire wealth of experience to fight. He regained the upper hand and inflicted several wounds on Poseidon. The expectations for this tough old man were rising, but hey, his opponent was a god. Wiping some blood on his hair to fix his style and look handsome again, Poseidon started putting in more effort to deal with this insolent opponent. Kajiro got hit before he even knew what was happening, forcing him to retreat and defend. But Poseidon's speed was too fast. It was as if Kajiro was trapped in a prison of tridents. Even if he could see the attacks coming, it was hard enough to block them, let alone counter. In times of stalemate like this, all you need is the power of friendship. Feeling the fighting spirit pass down from the top swordsman, Sasaki Kajiro became stronger than ever. In that moment of awakening, Kajiro unlocked the supreme realm of his 1000-image defense, and it was now the all-creation's 1000-blade scan. He dodged all of the sea god's attacks and closed the distance. When he was close enough, Kajiro unleashed his finishing moves. First, he took both hands. Next, 2 diagonal slashes divided Poseidon's body into 4 pieces. Amidst the indescribable emotions of humanity, the third battle ended. The victory belonged to the swordsman Sasaki Kajiro. The current score is 2-1. For the first time, a human had erased a god, making the divine realm a lot less arrogant. Just like the defeated human fighters, Poseidon's body also disintegrated into particles and drifted away. Now things were getting serious. Loki and Shiva went to find Zeus to see what the old godfather had planned. Outwardly, Zeus was calm, but inwardly he had already acknowledged humanity's strength. From now on, the gods would be serious, and a Greek god would appear, because they wanted to settle the score with interest after Poseidon's death. The arena for the fourth battle was a human city, London in the 19th century. The stage was changed at the request of humanity's representative, a request approved by the gods. The one who made the request was described as the most evil of the evil. His heart was filled with darkness, the one who spread fear throughout the city of London, the nightmare of prostitutes, the most infamous serial killer in human history, Jack the Ripper. The appearance of this murderer sparked a wave of protest from the stands. Their future was in the hands of a madman? A villain's past always hides a sad story. Nope, not Jack. Jack the Ripper was born and raised in a brothel in London, England. His mother was a veteran prostitute. He loved his mother very much, and his mother loved him too. At least, that's what he thought. She only loved Jack because his father was a rich man. So when she heard he had married another woman, Jack became a thorn in her side. But Jack wasn't an ordinary child. He could see people's emotions as colors. At that time, his mother's color was no longer the yellow of love, but the red of anger, just like all the others who had trampled on and rejected him. To save his mother from that disgusting color, he personally changed her to the purple color of fear until there were no colors left. To end the tragedy, Jack went to the one who caused it all, his father, and killed him. And so, the legend of the serial killer Jack the Ripper began. Facing this depraved monster was a valiant warrior who could complete 12 great labors with his bare hands, defeating the most hideous monsters. The messenger of justice, Hercules, a figure welcomed and loved by both humans and gods. Unlike the previous gods, he was originally a demigod. Before being deified, Hercules was known for his unparalleled righteousness and integrity in Thebes. Unfortunately, his physical limitations meant he often got beaten up. However, Hercules never gave up. He always trained to make himself more useful. And as time went by, Hercules grew into a tall, strong, and strapping young man. That was also when disaster struck Thebes. The gods decided to punish the city for its sins. Since Thebes was in the territory ruled by the god Ares, he would personally come to clean up. Facing the threat of his hometown's destruction, Hercules decided to confront the god of war. Since it's hard for a mortal to fight a war god like Ares, he drank ambrosia, the blood of Zeus. If he was lucky, he would gain godlike power. If not, he would die. After excruciating pain, Hercules did not die, and Captain Greece was officially born. Hercules now possessed the power of Zeus, and that power would help him defeat Ares. Then, he was deified by Zeus as the god of justice, and his hometown of Thebes was spared. Having to face a filthy murderer like Jack filled him with rage. Humanity felt the same. They had hunted for Jack everywhere while he was on his killing spree. They once despised him to the core, and now they had to cheer for him to survive. Just thinking about it was sickening. But Jack paid no mind to the jeers. His mind was busy figuring out how to kill the Greek god. Hercules advised him to give up and surrender, but Jack refused with a chillingly polite demeanor. Then he drew his divine weapon, a pair of giant scissors. A bizarre but incredibly sharp weapon. To demonstrate his fearsome power, Jack decided to run away, much to the bewilderment of Hercules and all of humanity. Faced with his opponent's cowardice, Hercules gave chase. When he caught up, he found Jack calmly enjoying a cup of tea. Enraged, Hercules charged forward and fell right into a trap. A board of knives and scissors fell on Hercules' head. However, ordinary blades couldn't even scratch a god. Despite not inflicting any damage, Jack remained calm, even as Hercules closed in. He knew Hercules was a close-range fighter, so he continued to run, this time with a grappling gun. There was no way Hercules would let his enemy keep toying with him like that. With a single leap, he caught up to Jack and swung his club. Jack raised the scissors to block, and the scissors cracked and broke. With his divine weapon destroyed, how could Jack fight Hercules? Jack stubbornly pulled out a short knife and slashed at the god. It seemed harmless, but it was surprisingly effective. The knives stabbed straight into Hercules' body. What was happening? Jack had tricked everyone. His divine weapon wasn't the scissors, but the pair of pouches on his hip. Their function is to create god-slaying weapons, but with limited size. He had successfully led a god by the nose, which infuriated the deities and gave humanity a glimmer of hope, even though they weren't too happy about it. The momentum was now with Jack. He constantly changed his knife-throwing style, and even though not all of them hit, they still damaged Hercules. Despite the rain of knives, the Greek war god closed the distance to swing his powerful club, but Jack still had enough time to block the blow with an umbrella. At this point, the demigod started using his skills. The tattoo patterns on the war god's body began to spread. They were called the 12 labors of Hercules. The first power he used was from his first labor, the Nemean lion. Channeling power into his lion-headed club, Hercules unleashed an incredibly powerful blow towards Jack. Even if he tried to block, he was sent flying. With Jack's ordinary mortal body, that should have been it, but miraculously, he only sustained an injury to one arm, which he could heal himself. Jack used the same old trick, throwing knives continuously, forcing Hercules to defend. This was Jack's way of creating a diversion to set up another trap. To activate this terrifying trap, Jack pulled on preset wires, and a relentless rain of knives fell, ricocheting off the wires and changing direction, making it impossible for Hercules to know which way to block. He suffered significant damage. To change the situation, the war god had to use his sixth labor, the power of the Stymphalian birds, turning his club into a large, bird-shaped fan. He blew Jack's knives back at him. Jack's madness now truly reached its peak. He loved the beauty and the color of death. He wanted to know if Hercules' steadfast yellow color would change to the color of grief as he prepared to die. But it was difficult. Hercules continuously closed in and pressured him. Jack now found it hard to even use his grappling gun. Hercules attacked relentlessly, bringing down the Big Ben clock tower where Jack was hiding, then activated his seventh labor, the power of the Cretan bull, ready to teach that trickster a lesson. In this life-or-death moment, Jack detached the clock face and threw it at Hercules. Hercules raised his arm to block, and the clock face severed the war god's arm. Hercules had been tricked again. Jack's true divine weapon was his glove, which could turn anything it touched into a god-slaying weapon, transformed from the Valkyrie H-Lurk. Jack had led Hercules on a wild goose chase time and time again, but the god of justice didn't know the meaning of giving up, and Hercules' color remained a vibrant yellow. The color of boundless love for humanity. No matter how evil humans were, Hercules still loved them with all his heart. That's why he had to win this match, so he could plead with the gods to give humanity a chance. With that determination, Hercules unleashed his strongest move, the 12th labor, the three-headed hellhound, Cerberus. At this moment, 3 giant dog heads appeared in the sky. They attached themselves to Hercules' body, giving him a completely new form, but this was also a life-risking move. The labor skills already caused immense damage to the user. Using the strongest labor would multiply that damage. If he didn't finish Jack quickly, Hercules would be the one to fall. Without further delay, Hercules charged forward at incredible speed, delivering devastating punches. Jack grabbed anything he could to defend, gradually being pushed into a corner. He wanted to escape but couldn't. And then Jack was hit by a punch that sent him crashing into a fence, piercing a hole in his abdomen. Jack still fought back, turning his cape into a weapon and cutting the building behind him, something he had touched earlier, causing it to collapse on Hercules. But my god, that building was not enough to take down the Greek war god. Faced with Hercules' color of true love, Jack's desire to defile him grew even stronger. The two switched to close-quarters combat to settle the score. Hercules' body was being worn down by the Cerberus state, and he only had one arm left to fight. Jack's body was a battered wreck with a hole in his stomach. And then, finally, Jack took the iron fence post from before and lunged at Hercules, and he missed. So Hercules returned the favor with a fatal blow. It seemed like Jack was done for, but he once again scrambled to his feet. He rushed at Hercules with the iron bar, missed again, and was countered again. Is this the end? Jack charged forward and stabbed his hand through Hercules' body. He had turned the blood from his own wound into a divine weapon for this final attack. Now, Hercules admitted that Jack was truly a strong opponent, and Jack admitted that he had lost because even at the very end, Hercules' brilliant yellow color never wavered. The Greek war god embraced the butcher. No matter how filthy he or any other human was, he still loved them all. Amidst the sorrow of all the gods, humans, and even the Valkyries who longed to save humanity, he entrusted the rest to Brunhilde. The fourth battle ended. The victory belonged to the murderer, Jack the Ripper. The current score is now tied at 2-2. As the winner of the fight to protect humanity, Jack was hated and rejected by humanity itself. Strangely, he only saw it as a song of praise and struck a pose of thanks. Zeus could not keep his composure after this second defeat. He would absolutely not allow these mortals to surpass the gods. The frightening power of humanity made Loki suspicious. The god of mischief believed that humanity's strength didn't just come from divine weapons. Loki suspected there was a traitor among the gods, and the one Loki suspected was none other than Shakyamuni, Aka the Buddha. Loki believed the Buddha had used Niflhel, a technique to secretly buff humanity's power. The two started bickering and were ready to throw down right then and there. Then the 7 lucky gods joined in, and even the fighter who defeated Poseidon, Sasaki Kajiro, wanted to join the fray, along with another human representative, Akita Sauji. As the chaos was escalating, Zeus and Odin appeared to stop the brawl. Zeus said this was not the time for internal squabbles among the gods. After a show of force from Odin, the crowd dispersed. Zeus didn't forget to give Buddha a death stare. Shakyamuni wasn't the least bit intimidated. Nothing could force him to submit, for he is the honored one throughout heaven and earth. Back in the Ragnarok arena, the fifth match was about to begin. Representing humanity is a sumo wrestler known as the Peerless Rikishi. Because his power was too great, he was banned from using certain moves, but for 20 years, no one could challenge his top position. The wrestler with the most breathtakingly beautiful muscles, enough to make your heart stop. His name is Raiden Tamimin. He was born in Shinano in January 1767. Unlike other children, even at 3 years old, Raiden couldn't stand. The reason was his incredible muscle mass. If he tried to move, the pressure would break his bones. It seemed that Raiden would be killed by the curse of his own strength, but heaven doesn't forsake anyone. His body solved the problem of having too many muscles by creating new muscle fibers, also known as the 100 seals, making him tougher than anyone. The passion for sumo ignited in Raiden at the age of 5. His strength made the other kids in the village afraid to play with him. Because of this, Raiden once hated his own strength, but his mother always believed that his strength would take him far and help people. Raiden grew up to be a kind-hearted young man, loved by the old and cherished by the young. But then, the eruption of Mount Asama caused a crop failure, plunging Raiden's hometown into famine. Raiden then packed his bags and went to Edo to become a professional sumo wrestler, hoping to send money back to his village to help his people. Thanks to continuous training with masters in the field, Raiden became a top-tier wrestler, sending money back to save his village from starvation. His overwhelming power made him a monster in the eyes of other wrestlers. But when he realized he had strayed from the path his mother had advised, Raiden decided to retire with regret, because after more than 2 years in the ring, he had never once fought with his full strength. That's the profile of humanity's representative. And representing the gods against Raiden is an almighty being whose hobby is to create, and then destroy, destroy, and then create. Simply because he will crush anything he doesn't like. The god from the land of India, Shiva. Thousands of years ago in India, there were thousands of gods, each with different powers. They often fought for supremacy, but could never find a true leader. On a remote mountain, there were 2 unknown gods, Rudra and Shiva. One trained diligently, while the other was only passionate about dancing. One day, Rudra suddenly had a great ambition to defeat all the gods and rule over all of India. Though he wasn't interested, Shiva agreed to go with him, simply because doing anything with Rudra was fun. And so their journey of conquest began. Through countless battles, they made history like no one before. 1,115 gods were defeated by their hands, but the pinnacle is only for one. Together, Shiva and Rudra created the greatest war in India. No matter how fierce, all wars must come to an end. The final winner was Shiva. From then on, he became the leader, possessing the greatest power among the Indian gods. The arena for the 5th match was set up like a sumo ring, a perfect stage for 2 brawlers to fight with their muscles. After the traditional salt-throwing ritual, Raiden got into his stance, ready to fight, and launched a double kick straight to the Indian god's face while Shiva was still off balance. Though pushed back several feet, the Indian god managed to stay on his feet. Not giving his opponent a moment to breathe, Raiden continued to close in and attack, and with just 2 blows, he brought the god to his knees. However, on the next knee strike, Shiva managed to use his 3 arms to block and then countered with 2 hooks to Raiden's stomach. The fight, though just beginning, was already intense. At this point, Raiden began to unleash his true power. His muscles bulged out. If he let them continue to grow, his body would explode. That's when the power of his divine weapon came into play. The Valkyrie teaming up with Raiden was Thrud, a giant demigoddess who transformed into a sumo belt that could control the explosive growth of his muscles while also maximizing their power. After releasing the 100 seals, Raiden charged forward, channeling all his strength into a powerful punch. Shiva used all 4 of his arms to block, but was still sent flying. Pressing his advantage, humanity's representative continued to land heavy punches, then finished his opponent with a forbidden 100 series, Tsupari, headbutt. Could it be that in this match, humanity would completely outclass the gods? That's what humanity thought, and the Valkyries thought so too, but Shiva didn't think so. After countering Raiden's headbutt with his own headbutt, the Indian god used the advantage of his 4 arms to return all the punches he had received from the sumo wrestler. But all that did was make the human fighter even more fired up. He grabbed one of Shiva's arms and used all his muscle power to break it, reducing the god's arm count to 3. The gods began to tremble, but the Indian gods weren't too worried because they believed in Shiva's power, a power that came from fists containing the souls of 1,116 Indian gods, which would turn the tide. Fueled by the faith and enthusiastic cheers of his home crowd, Shiva put more power into his punches. But with one arm gone, his body was off balance, and his blows lost their accuracy. This also created more openings, allowing Raiden to easily dodge and land punches on the god. The sumo wrestler's punches rained down on the god's face. Not wanting to fall too far behind, with just one punch, Shiva was able to make Raiden feel dizzy. Tired of punching, both god and man grabbed each other's heads and began a headbutting contest to see whose skull was harder. The cracking sounds made many spectators cringe. After the headbutting duel, Shiva switched to a new fighting style amidst the excited screams of the Indian gods. Shiva began his dance. The fluid movements and high speed helped the god of destruction gain an advantage over Raiden. He could attack while also easily dodging the human representative's attacks. The battle was completely in the god's favor. The faster the dance rhythm, the faster the attack speed, and the punches gradually gained weight. Raiden could only brace himself and endure. The sumo wrestler's muscles bulged even more, both for defense and to wait for an opportunity to counter. But even the strongest defense can eventually crumble. After his dance, Shiva set his own body on fire and used it to create a downward kick from above, creating a line of fire with terrifying heat that left a long burn mark on the human fighter's body. The situation was looking dire for humanity. Everyone's faces were tense, but Raiden's brothers, like the Indian god's entourage, had great faith in their fighter. In response to his supporters, Raiden decided to play his trump card, which he had been hiding. It was a very basic move, but its power was off the charts. Raiden got into a ready stance, quickly shifted his muscles, and channeled all his strength into his arm and hand to perform his ultimate technique, the open palm push, Yatagarasu. The stronger the attack, the greater the backlash on the user's body. His muscles were torn, continuously spraying blood. In his current state, it was a miracle that Raiden was still standing. However, he wanted more. Humanity's representative wanted through to move his muscles even faster, despite the fact that it could turn his body and internal organs into a bloody pulp. But Raiden didn't care, because this was the one and only time he could go all out with sumo, the very thing that had rejected him his entire life. After Raiden's powerful attack, Shiva, although still standing, had 2 arms completely severed and his body was covered in wounds. In this situation, the god of destruction had to surpass his own limits to defeat the sumo wrestler before him. Shiva stimulated his heart to beat faster and danced until his body completely burned away, unlocking the Tandava karma state. Meanwhile, Raiden immediately got into a ready stance, prepared to face the god at any moment. The two charged at each other with a thirst for victory to repay the faith of the people and gods behind them. After a few exchanges, both Raiden and Shiva knew it was time to deliver their finishing blows. Raiden once again channeled all his strength into his palm for his ultimate technique, Yatagarasu. Shiva continued to dance to perform his finishing move, Deva Loka. The moment Shiva's heel collided with Raiden's hand, half of the sumo wrestler's arm disintegrated. However, Raiden refused to fall. He thanked Shiva for giving him the chance to fight at full strength and asked Thrud to leave him to save herself. But the Valkyrie refused and wanted to die with him. After the kick that blew off Raiden's head, Shiva had to acknowledge his opponent by calling out his name, Raiden Tamimin. Raiden's body shattered, signaling the end of the 5th battle. Victory belonged to the god of destruction, Shiva, after 11 minutes and 16 seconds. The current score is 3-2 in favor of the gods. To bid farewell to their brother, the sumo wrestlers simultaneously performed the traditional stomping motion of their martial art. And Shiva, the god who had wholeheartedly supported the annihilation of humanity, finally admitted that humans were pretty darn amazing. Somewhere outside the arena, Zeus approached Shakyamuni and requested him to be the next god to fight. Without any objection, Shakyamuni agreed to represent the gods in the 6th match. What could be more ironic than the one who saved humanity from suffering, who showed them the way out of the darkness of desire, now having to fight to lead all living beings to the path of destruction? However, just as he was introduced to the arena, Shakyamuni moved to humanity's side, much to the bewilderment of both gods and men. To explain his actions, Shakyamuni took Heimdall's horn microphone and boldly declared, "I, Shakyamuni, represent humanity. I will save the human race. Anyone who objects will be killed without mercy." Shakyamuni's declaration ignited the fury of the gods, heralding an uncompromising battle. This whole script was written in advance. Brunhilde had arranged it before when she went to meet the Buddha to learn about Niflhel. Even before the Ragnarok tournament was set, with his compassion and love for humanity, and also because he wasn't too fond of the other gods, the Buddha couldn't refuse the offer. This betrayal sent the gods into a rage, but there was nothing they could do. Zeus had to swallow his anger and put forth another fighter. Dark clouds gathered, covering the sky. Beams of light shone down on the treasure ship, the Takarabun. Aboard it were the 7 lucky gods, but when these 7 gods merged, they became the god who heralds great calamity for mankind. His divine name is Zirafuku. He was originally a god of fortune, but misfortune changed him. In ancient Asia, when humans and gods lived together, there was a young god named Zirafuku. He always believed that every day was a blessing for all living beings. His heart embraced all things. During one of his visits to the mortal world, Zirafuku witnessed the horror of the 8 sufferings and misfortunes that humans had to endure. With his compassionate heart, Zirafuku was determined to save all beings. Then, a thought flashed in the young god's mind. He decided to eliminate the root of misfortune by absorbing it all. 7 years later, Zirafuku's body gradually changed. His entire being was colored by misfortune and pain, but he was still happy because he had saved all beings from suffering. However, reality disappointed Zirafuku. When humans were freed from the 8 misfortunes, they fell into ugly and ungrateful great sins. Witnessing humanity's depravity, the god constantly asked himself why humans had not become happy. And then he saw a procession of both humans and animals, led by a young man. These beings looked emaciated, but they radiated an aura of happiness, the very thing Zirafuku wanted for all beings. That young man was Siddhartha, aka the Buddha. He explained that what Zirafuku did was wrong. Only when people can shed their own burdens can happiness truly come. The people in that village had been truly purified and decided to forsake everything to reach enlightenment. But Zirafuku couldn't accept it. He was jealous of that mortal and saw it as an insult. In his pain, Zirafuku's love turned to hatred, transforming him into a deadly calamity, a sign of a terrifying disaster. But because he couldn't bear to harm living beings, Zirafuku decided to split himself into 7 parts, thus creating the 7 lucky gods. As for the Buddha, what did he have to go through to achieve enlightenment and lead all beings? He was originally the prince of the small Shakya kingdom in ancient northern India. From the moment he was born, he was destined by the gods to be the king of the world, having everything anyone could ever desire. Fate was set, and all he had to do was follow it. But after talking with King Jataka, hearing the young man's questions about happiness, about birth, aging, sickness, and death, about all things, and after the king passed away, Siddhartha attained enlightenment. He now understood everything. At King Jataka's funeral, Siddhartha appeared, carried the king's coffin, and placed it on the sacred Ganges River so his brother could witness everything with his own eyes and find true happiness. After that, Siddhartha abandoned the frivolous things he was given and left to live the life of a solitary ascetic. Wherever he went, he rejected the harsh and outdated rules that bound people. The Buddha always believed that no one had the right to impose their destiny on others, not even saints or gods. Back to the fight. When both fighters were ready, Heimdall declared the 6th battle officially begun. Zirafuku, with his living axe in hand, was boasting when he got a kick to the face as a greeting. The surprising opening blow left the god dizzy and staggering. To retaliate, Zirafuku continuously swung his axe, but his accuracy was a solid 0. But no worries, because Zirafuku's weapon had the ability to absorb misfortune. Every missed swing was a moment of misfortune, which caused its power to grow endlessly. The name of this treasure is the Misery Cleaver, but no matter how strong it gets, if it keeps missing like this, it's useless. Unlike Kajiro's skill, which was based on experience, the Buddha knew where Zirafuku would strike and moved in advance, a skill only an enlightened one could awaken. The tide of battle was completely in the Buddha's favor, but the more miserable Zirafuku became, the more the Misery Cleaver grew. It transformed into a giant weapon, so that when it came crashing down, the opponent couldn't escape. The Buddha knew this. Instead of trying to escape, he would face it head-on by activating his divine weapon, the 6 Realms Staff, which transformed into the Ahimsa Shield. The special thing about this divine weapon is that it can change its form based on the Buddha's emotions. The large-scale attack was nullified. Zirafuku transformed the Misery Cleaver into a giant bladed weapon. Immediately, the Buddha's divine weapon responded, becoming the Salakayas, charging straight forward, dodging the attack while landing a horizontal blow to the god's stomach. While the Buddha fought effortlessly, Zirafuku looked constipated. To regain control, the god continuously transformed his weapon, but it was ineffective because the Buddha diversified his fighting style through various weapon forms, from a flexible long-range halberd to a short-range slashing sword. But fighting isn't the strongest suit of the founder of Buddhism. He wanted to enlighten the suffering god and help him escape his sorrow. Witnessing the Buddha's aura, Zirafuku finally realized how much he wanted to be loved. The misfortune vanished, and the Misery Cleaver lost its effectiveness. To completely free Zirafuku, the Buddha decided to fight him hand-to-hand. The crowd cheered for their representative. Now, the 2 fighters had cast off their divine and mortal shells. They just fought. After a few exchanges of blows, the Buddha ended the confrontation with a direct punch to his opponent's face. Despite losing, Zirafuku was very happy. It had been a long time since he had felt such happiness. Before the Buddha, the god promised to love himself more and return to bestowing blessings on all beings. Just when it seemed that victory and enlightenment had been achieved, the boss music started playing. Zirafuku began to transform into a grotesque creature, causing the Buddha to instinctively step back. Everyone was stunned, wondering what kind of monster that was. At that moment, Hades, the king of the underworld, spoke up to explain. There is a legend that a great demon lord once destroyed half of Helheim. To be more precise, the other half was lucky to escape when he suddenly disappeared. The name of that monster is the demon lord of the 6th heaven, Hagen. What Hades wondered was, Hagen was originally a demon, so how could he be born from a god like this? In the divine realm, only one person could do this. He collected and cultivated Hagen's cells and then implanted them into Zirafuku's body. That person is Beelzebub. The demon's purpose is unknown, but the appearance of the demon lord signaled a tough time for the Buddha. Kicking off the second round, Hagen sprouted a blade from his arm and charged forward for a direct attack. His speed was terrifying, but with his precognition, the Buddha should have been able to dodge it easily. This was only true for beings with souls. For a demon shrouded in darkness like Hagen, that trick was useless. After the warm-up, Hagen got to the main course. This time, it was a punch with a spinning blade. The Buddha immediately defended with his Ahimsa shield. After the impact, Hagen's blade was stained with blood. He had pierced the shield and taken one of the Buddha's eyes. Taking advantage of this, Hagen spammed attacks into the Buddha's blind spot, forcing him to strain himself to defend. The Buddha tried to awaken Zirafuku, but only received Hagen's scornful laughter. He considered the god of fortune as nothing more than fertile ground to nourish himself. At this point, the Buddha was truly enraged, vowing to destroy this monster. That very emotion caused the 6 Realms Staff to transform into a form that even its owner had never seen before. the war scythe. With this new state of his divine weapon, the power of the Buddha's attacks increased dramatically, but it was still blocked by the demon lord. The human representative took a spear to the stomach. Despite being covered in injuries, the Buddha still believed he could turn the tide. Hajin began to waver as he witnessed his opponent's tenacity. Regaining his composure, Hajin continued to charge, increasing the pressure and suffocating his opponent. The Buddha had to resort to a tight defense, waiting for an opportunity to counter. Hajin grew increasingly nervous. He didn't expect his enemy to be so tough, so he decided to go all in, literally, to end the fight quickly. The subsequent clash between the two fighters created a turning point. The disadvantage once again fell to the Buddha, as his Six Realms staff was completely destroyed. But it was all right. He received a gift from Zirafuku, the Misery Cleaver, along with an ultimate technique that human fighters still use, Niflhel. The divine weapon was reforged into the Great Nirvana Sword Zero, possessing the power of the supreme realm of Nirvana. Humanity started to feel more confident about the Buddha's victory, but for those with experience, the outlook was still bleak. His body was damaged, his stamina was dropping, and even with a divine weapon, it might not be enough. But his enemy had shot himself in the foot. After witnessing the Buddha manage to slow down the fight, Hajin's spirit wavered even more. That was the chance for the Buddha's future vision to return. Fear had exposed his soul. From then on, Hajin couldn't land a single blow. Unable to let the situation continue, the demon lord gathered his strength for a decisive slash, but only hit the Buddha's afterimage. The enlightened one had seized the opportunity to appear in his opponent's blind spot and channeled all his strength for the finishing blow. A combined attack from two rebellious youths, Mahapari Nirvana. The blow sliced the demon lord in two, much to the chagrin of the gods and the cheers of humanity. Hajin disappeared, and Zirafuku would follow. However, he was no longer in pain. The god would live happily in the minds of those he once blessed. The Buddha had brought humanity its third victory in Ragnarok. After this defeat, Zeus was truly furious, unable to believe that the gods were on equal footing with lowly mortals. And so, the next fighter for the gods was decided. Hades, the king of the underworld, would enter the fray, both to avenge Poseidon and to show those mortals what a king is made of. A king must face another king. Where I walk, a path is made. The first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, will be humanity's representative in the 7th match. What will be the outcome of this epic showdown? Just wait for the movie to come out and we'll have it for you right away.
Thanks for watching.
This is Silly
Subscribe
Recap,
for
signing
more
off.
silly recaps.
See you next time.